the sensation wakes me up in the middle of the night at 5 in the morning, and I literally dropped to my knees. It was so excruciating.
Welcome to Heart with Anna. I am so excited because we are recording at Podcast Movement, which is the biggest podcasting conference in North America, maybe in the world. We're recording in We're Rolling Studio today, which is an amazing concept. Bring the recording studio to the podcaster. So thank you so much for letting us do this recording. We're Rolling Studio. We're having a blast. You can find them on Instagram. We're Rolling Studio. I am Anna Jaworski and the mother of an adult with a single ventricular heart. That's the reason I'm the host of your program. Today's guest is Jeff Holden. Jeff Holden is an avid cyclist and podcast studio owner, a broadcaster pro turned podcast leader. Jeff created and hosts the nonprofit podcast network. Jeff aims to revolutionize the way nonprofit organizations communicate their stories for the betterment of their organizations. He was identified with a myocardial bridge in November 2021 at the age of 65 and has since committed to supporting others dealing with symptoms of their bridges through a variety of efforts, including a podcast, Imperfect Heart, which I love the name of that podcast. It's fantastic. Jeff has his own story to tell, from symptoms to diagnosis to treatment, giving him insight and empathy as well as experience in the process of advocating for patients. So welcome to Heart with Anna today, Jeff.
Well, thank you so much, Anna. I'm really thrilled to be here.
I'm just thrilled for us to be here, and we're Rolling Studios. I've never been in an outdoor studio like this. I don't know how much the microphones are picking up the buzz behind us, but there certainly are people all around us, and this is just so cool.
It'll be clear we're live.
It'll be clear we're live, absolutely. It is fitting that we are recording this episode at Podcast Movement, since that's where I met you last year at Podcast Movement, thanks to our mutual friend, Boots 19.
Who was also a guest on my podcast, as I was on hers, all about hearts.
Right, and I've been on her podcast and she's been on my podcast, so what a small world, right? Last year was your first time to attend Podcast Movement, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, this is my 5th.
Oh my gosh, is it your 5th?
Yes.
Okay, I think
Yes.
this is my 8th.
Good for you.
I know, it's amazing. Okay, but it was my first time to meet you at Podcast
That's
Movement.
correct. That's
okay.
correct.
And I remember that when I met you and sat down and had dinner with you and Boots, I was amazed by your story. So can you tell my listeners about how you discovered you had a congenital heart defect at the age of 65?
Right. I'm amazed by my story every day when I wake up. It's truly a blessing. I am an avid cyclist, and I was riding one day training for an event, and I noticed that I had this unusual sensation, but the event was coming up and I wasn't going to worry too much about it. And so the event is on a Saturday. We arrive at the event on Friday. It's a grueling Sierra Mountain bike ride. I'm in great shape. I'm really ready for it. And unfortunately, one of the fires breaks out, which is not uncommon in the Sierras. And the smoke cancels the ride. And then, of course, the fire cancels the ride as well.
Right.
I go home and I feel like I got all this training in. I hate to waste all this great effort, so I find another event that's a couple weeks away. And I go out and ride the next day. And I get that sensation again, and it lasts a little bit longer. It's a burning, searing sensation in the center of my chest. Like you think gas. But
no, I wouldn't, but that's okay.
For those of us with
I would be
anything,
scared.
that thing we all find ourselves is the horrible word called denial.
Yeah.
And it's like, can't be, I'm in great shape, everything's fine, I never had any problems, I eat well, I know I'm in good shape. Anyhow, it continues, it starts only when I'm starting to ride. I go out and ride for 2 or 3 more hours and everything's fine, come home. The next couple of days I go out again and it lasts a little bit longer. I look at the monitor, nothing's unusual. And this progresses. I go and do that ride that I really wanted to do. And I was so adamant I wanted to be 100% for that ride. And sure enough, we start on the ride and it just eats at me for 10 minutes. But it still was one of the best rides I've ever done with that group. I get to the hotel and I tell my wife I'm all excited. We sit down, and that evening the sensation happens again for the first time ever, not on the bike.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, something's not right here. So I go to the doctor on Monday saying, I got to get this looked at, something's not right. And they do an EKG and say, it's a little bit off, but not anything we're concerned about. We'll get a chest x-ray. We'll make sure all that's good, and we'll set you up with a cardiologist on Friday.
So they weren't terribly concerned, or else they would have had you in the emergency room right away.
I'm in good shape.
Right.
Yeah, they say, hey, you look fine.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's just something, we'll figure it out. And then we're going down the path of something in the gastrointestinal tract.
Sure.
Anyhow, that Thursday I have a heart attack. I don't get to the cardiologist meeting.
You don't get to see him, he gets to see you.
The
And in the
sensation-
hospital.
That's right.
Yeah.
The sensation wakes me up in the middle of the night at 5 in the morning, and I literally dropped to my knees. It was so excruciating, and I told my wife, I said, that sensation, it's the same thing that I'm feeling, only it's different. This is every classic symptom of a heart attack. I got the nausea, the sweating, the pain, radiating pain down the arm, back. I think it was every single one. And it eased up a little bit. The paramedics, they throw the EKG on me with the, yes, Mr. Holden, you're having a heart attack. Where do you want to go to the hospital? So we get to the hospital, and that's the first awareness that something significant is wrong.
Oh my gosh. So you're 65. You're in the best shape you've probably ever been in. You had told me yesterday you have done 32 triathlons.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah, the short ones, not the big ones. I did an annual event over here.
Well, what's the matter with you? Not doing a big.
And I'm not a big swimmer. This is a kayaking triathlon, so it's run, ride, kayak.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, you still have to be in really good shape. There's no way I'm going out there and doing that tomorrow.
Wouldn't you think somewhere over 32 years something would have presented?
You would have
Nothing.
thought.
Nothing.
You would have thought. So all of a sudden, you're in the ambulance and they're asking you where to go. Did you even know where to go?
I had a relationship with a cardiologist. Interesting that we do a podcast, and he was in the studio the other day,
Okay.
just prior, so I knew I wanted to go to that hospital, and I said, that's my cardiologist.
Okay.
And they thought they were just going to go in and do an angiogram, stent me, and that'd be fine.
Sure.
Actually, I thought it would be better. He says, hey, if this is the case, we're going to feel great. But I never felt bad. I said, I never felt bad.
Well, except those few minutes.
Correct.
when you were at the beginning of
But
the
all
cycle.
very recent. So they go in and they do the angiogram, there's nothing there. They come out and say, there's nothing, you're fine. We don't know what's wrong with you. And that progressed for some time.
Right. So eventually you did need surgery. How did you find somebody who was willing to operate on you, and how did they figure out what to do?
Well, I'll back up just a little bit to get you to what it was that they found. What happens is once this condition presents, depending on who you are, how old you are, and how severe it is in your heart, it's called a myocardial bridge, and that's where the coronary artery goes in through the heart versus over the heart, which is typical.
Right.
And it can be deep embedded in the heart, it can be shallow, it can be long, it can be short, and everybody's different in the way that manifests. Mine was a manifestation via endothelial dysfunction. And the vessel itself, the coronary artery, compresses, spasms.
But it is
So-
still embedded in the tissue.
It's still in the tissue. So what happens is now you have a situation where the artery itself is spasming and closing down, and then the heart's compressing what little bit might have been through. And the longer that happens, the duration is the less blood gets to the heart, then you have an ischemic incident. So that's what was happening. So I was going into these episodes of vasospasms that are ischemic attacks. They feel like little heart attacks, and they would last for 2, 3, 4 minutes. They didn't know what was wrong. They knew I was having these spasms. They assumed, but you cannot see them in any measurement. The only way you can identify them is through a particular test, which is called a provocative test, where they actually go in, a flow meter and an ultrasound, and it's in the artery.
It's in the coronary artery.
It's in the
And
coronary
see,
artery.
Normally, when they're testing, they're not looking in the coronary arteries. Coronary arteries are a lot smaller, so it's harder to get the cameras in there, I would imagine.
Yeah, and they usually catheterize you through the leg because it's a bigger artery. And that's the process. So they then aggravate. They use a chemical that will incite the spasm.
Okay.
If you are symptomatic, a normal person without the condition, they'll put the chemical in, it's acetylcholine, they'll put that chemical in and it'll puff up, it'll expand the arteries.
Okay.
Somebody like us with endothelial dysfunction, dysfunction being the key word,
Right.
when they add the chemical, it constricts. So
And
they
then
know.
you feel that pain
Oh, then
immediately,
you're-
and you know. So
you're awake during the
I was just going to
process.
say,
Yes.
are you awake?
Yeah, I remember telling you,
Wow.
you're loaded up with morphine. I remember telling the doctor at the time doing the testing, I looked up, I said, that's the sensation. She goes, oh no, we see it. Because
Oh.
they're measuring everything.
Oh,
We
okay.
see the constriction. I said, yeah, but I feel it.
Oh, yeah. And that had to feel scary since you had just had a heart attack.
Well, yeah, because you're thinking they're causing it to happen.
Right.
But that's where they're doing all the measurement. And then they also do a debumine test, which accelerates the heart as if it's under stress. And they want to see what's happening as it's compressing the artery with a rapid beat, what that looks like in flow rate is. So now they know how severe, but in my case, it was 98% going
Wow.
on.
98%.
So basically no blood.
How did you not pass out?
It doesn't last that long. However, when you're on the street, not under diagnosing and testing, that's exactly what happens. And that's how people die. They go into that particular situation and go into a ventricular tachycardia, which is a rapid heartbeat, real rapid heartbeat on the ventricle side, which is so rapid at some point it just goes into fibrillation and nothing flows. It's not uncommon when you're in tachycardia, and then it just goes into a flutter, and then nothing happens. And then you do pass out, and if somebody doesn't get to you, that's the challenge. That's where it's shocking back. If they don't get to you soon, the people die.
Heart to Heart with Anna is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the HUG Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a non-profit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to uplift, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at www.congenitalheartdefects.com for information about CHD, the hospitals that treat children with CHD, summer camps for CHD survivors, and much, much more.
Embark on a heartwarming odyssey with Baby Heart's Pressure Gateway to uplifting stories for the CHD community. Introducing the Heart of a Heart Warrior book series, inspiring those born with heart defects and their loved ones. Discover the heart of a mother, the heart of a father, and my brother needs an operation. Books celebrating strength, love, and familial support. Visit babyheartspress.com and be part of our loving community, uplifting hearts one story at a time.
Before the break, we learned that you had a heart attack, and then they forced you to have the sensation that scared you.
The test,
and
it's called a provocative test.
the provocative test. What a name for a
Right?
test.
Well, it's
Okay.
provoking.
It definitely was provoking, and it provoked you.
And this test is not for the faint of heart doctor. I mean, somebody's got to know what they're doing, because if they don't catch it right, there have been situations where they've tried to do it externally and people passed away. So they don't do that any longer, obviously,
Well, thank goodness.
because they can't get the nitroglycerin in fast enough to cease the condition that they're creating.
That is just terrifying. So they gave you the provocative test. They said, oh my goodness, yes, what you're feeling, we can quantify it.
Yep.
We can see that it's happening. Did they do surgery immediately after that?
No, unfortunately, you have to be scheduled. They have to map everything out digitally, which
Sure.
is what they do. They ensure all the latest AI technology to make sure they know exactly where the artery is that's compressed underneath the heart tissue. And then what the surgery is, they actually just go in and cut the muscle tissue over the artery. That's called an unroofing procedure.
Right. I remember Roots. So any of you who heard the episode with Roots Knighton, she talked about that too. And I just felt myself cringing at the thought of literally cutting on the heart. Don't they worry about the scar tissue and what that
No.
might do?
There is none, because it flays open like a piece of meat. It
Wow.
flays open, and then it exposes the artery.
Sure.
And now the artery is no longer getting the compression every heartbeat.
Right.
In many cases, they literally instantly plumps right up, and it's happy again.
Sure.
Now, it doesn't always end in endothelial dysfunction, because those cells have been damaged. And in many cases, it could take up to 2 years for people to heal. And in some cases, they may never be 100%, but they will be far better than they were prior to the surgery.
Imagine 65 years of living with this condition. Your body has grown accustomed to it.
Right.
And it's not spring chicken anymore.
Hey.
We aren't as rubbery when we're in our 60s as we are when we're in our teens or in our 20s. So I can imagine the body saying, no, this is the way I've always been. So what can they do if it doesn't resume the way that it's supposed to?
It's just a matter of time. Not everybody has endothelial dysfunction. Somebody who's younger, maybe they have that artery pressed as long.
Right,
And
right.
some people even in their 70s, they don't have endocrine dysfunction because you close the artery, so that they have radiating pain, they have shortness of breath.
Right.
I never had it. I just had a stirring sensation, blood loss to the nerve.
This whole experience of having your coronary arteries actually embedded in your heart just blows my mind. And I remember when Boots was telling me about it, I thought, how could she have been so athletic and not know? Likewise with you. But the thing that concerns me with your story is that you started to have this constriction even when you weren't exerting yourself.
Right.
Now, why did that happen?
Just conditional. Once that artery gives up, it's done. It'll spasm.
So is that a clear sign of the decline?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, once you are symptomatic, it deteriorates. We can't get better. There's no way to make it improve unless you mechanically do something to alter the flow.
Okay. So the other thing I was wondering is, I know that my daughter had a coarctation of her aorta, and when she had her open heart surgery, the surgeon actually went in and cut out the kink and then rejoined the artery so that there wasn't that kink anymore. Because apparently if you just do a balloon, there's a chance that you could have that coarctation again. So he took care of the fact that that wasn't going to happen. You had this compressed area of your coronary arteries, but it's not as big as the aorta. Did they talk about possibly cutting it and joining it so that it wasn't compressed? Because I would imagine that the endothelial compression only happened where it was embedded in the heart. Would it be along the entire coronary artery?
That's correct. At the point of entry into the heart is where it gets damaged, obviously, if it's getting compressed, like a garden hose.
Sure.
You just keep stepping on it. Eventually, it doesn't expand as fast and doesn't do what it's supposed to do with the water.
Right.
Some people do have actually kinks in their coronary arteries, and they do say for those people that it's possible that once we release it, while it's going to flow, it could go back to the shape, and we might have to do something at a later point. But fortunately, mine was straight.
Okay. And I didn't feel the need to put a stent in there? Or...
For anybody that's listening, do not. If you have this condition and somebody says, we'll stent a bridge to open it up, never, never, never. The stents can't hold up to the compression of the heart. It beats the stent up, and then the stent
and then that's
collapses,
compressed, and then that becomes
done.
A blockage.
Then you're in trouble. Yeah,
Wow.
Then you're in trouble because you can't fix that. Doctors will look at that and say, oh, we can fix that, or just use the stent because the heart's stronger than the stent.
Absolutely.
It will break it down over time.
You have to get that compressed artery
Release.
out. Yeah, it has to be out.
Correct.
Eat up by the heart.
Right.
Wow. Okay, so how did you finally find a doctor who said, yes, this is really going on. Yes, we are going to release that artery so that you can live a normal life again.
The condition is often misdiagnosed or treated as benign, which is a big problem because so many people have it. The estimate's about 1 in 4 people have the condition. Not everybody's symptomatic. It's our contention, and the reason we do the podcast is that you may only have one symptom. It's a heart attack, and it looks like a coronary blockage, they died. Well, they don't go do an autopsy.
And to be fair, you may have some coronary blockage by the time you're in your 60s anyway.
Yes. And 100% of the cases where the artery enters the heart, 100%, the coronary artery is narrowed either from just compression or plaque buildup, because the plaque backwashes every time the heart squeezes it. And of course, the flow slows right where it enters the heart. So it's easy for plaque to get off.
Sure, that
like an
makes
eddy in a
sense.
river leading sediment.
Right. And then with the compression too, any plaque that happens to be in there, it's going to compress down and continue to grow,
Well,
and then
you've already
it'll
got a
attract
narrowing.
more. Right, it'll attract more plaque.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really scary.
Yep.
That's really, really scary.
And that's why it may look like you've had an LAD, a widowmaker heart attack. It was clogged. Well, maybe. But if 1 in 4 of us have this condition, the odds are pretty good. Many of those are caused by a bridge, but we'll never know that until it starts diagnosing it properly and looking for it and the cause of death.
Because most people don't have an autopsy.
Don't have it.
Wow. Okay, so you found a surgeon.
The surgeon
Was it-
happened to be Stanford.
Okay.
I live in California. I live in Central California, a couple hours from Stanford. Stanford has a program that started about 12 years ago today in treating myocardial bridges. Once they realized this thing was a condition. That's where they would realize we could do research on this and identifying the fact that this is actually causing problems, and we can fix this with this particular solution. They're the world leader in myocardial
So they
bridge treatment.
haven't been doing this for very long, then, have they?
No, when I went in, they only used one surgeon for it. His name is Dr. Jack Floyd. He's the number one guy in the world doing this particular surgery.
Just happened to be in Stanford, which just happens to be near where you live.
Am I
Wow.
blessed and lucky?
I would say all of the above.
Yep. And at the time that he was going in to do my surgery, I was about 200 over 10 years. So he was doing about 20.
Wow. But then they discovered you had another condition.
I want to touch on that quickly. Pectus excavata, which is a depression of your sternum. In many cases, they treat it early because it's a condition that is not going on the chest. Well, mine didn't look that bad. I had a
You're
little,
really skinny.
I had a little dent in my chest. I never knew it was
Yeah.
anything.
I think maybe if you had been a much bigger person, it would have been more obvious, but you're very, very thin.
So I'm like, what is this thing? Well, what was happening is my sternum, when it was formed, was deeper, and it was also compressed in the left ventricle of the heart. So they look at my heart and they said, well, your right side of your heart's much bigger. Until they realized it's not. One side's compressed, the right side. That's not a
Your
good thing.
heart's compressing your coronary artery, your sternum's compressing your heart. None of this is good. We got to
Well, the
release
heart's
all
working
of it.
too hard.
It's really working too hard and under a lot of pressure.
Right. So what they do is they go in and they literally do the sternotomy. They open you up. When they're done with that, they close the sternum in the middle, and then they cut the ribs away from the sternum, put a bar in there to hold it all up, and then you
Sounds
heal.
really painful.
It's been a whole lot of fun.
No.
And the bar stays in there for a year.
Wow.
And then they take it out a year later. The takeout is easy, it just slides right out. But nonetheless, they had to fix that too. So they took care of all of it at the same time.
There's no point releasing the coronary artery if you're still going to have your sternum compressing on
The
your
heart.
heart anyway.
Right.
So it does make sense. Go ahead.
I got a twofer.
You got a twofer. And probably lots of cardiac rehab after that. But weren't you the ideal patient? I mean, here you had been training for the triathlons, and bike rides, and you knew how to work out.
I did, and I had deteriorated because I couldn't ride, run, walk. I couldn't do anything. Fortunately for me, I was in good shape, and that makes a big difference. I didn't do cardiac rehab.
Oh,
No, they just go home and do what you do. Watch you walk a lot, just do this, monitor everything, and my big thing is when can I get back on bikes?
right.
Did it about 10 or 12 weeks.
Well, yeah, because what if you were on a bike and you had a problem? I'm sure they wanted you to make sure whenever you did exercise, you exercised with somebody, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then especially on a bike ride, you don't want to be out in the Sierra on a bike ride when you are just recovering
They were
from
more
heart
concerned-
surgery.
The heart seemed fine. Everything was going well. I remember the first ride was on a trainer just to make sure the heart was good. Everything was fine there. Couldn't do but 2 miles. I was riding 100. It came back quickly, but what if I fall and I'm going to ruin it? I did all this work. I still have a bar in me.
Yes, doing it on a stationary bike was a smart idea
Yeah.
to get started, and that probably helped build your confidence.
It did, and I
little
would happily. I am absolutely 100% went back to doing everything I did. I did that ride in the Sierras. 2 years later, I did it last year. Literally everything was back.
This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed in the podcast are not those of Hearts Unite the Globe, but of the hosts and guests, and are intended to spark discussion about issues pertaining to congenital heart disease or bereavement.
You are listening to Heart with Anna. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our show, please send an email to Anna Jaworski at anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. That's anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. Now, back to Heart with Anna.
So, Jeff, reflecting on your journey, how has your experience impacted your outlook on life and your daily habits?
Significantly. A different perspective. We're happy to be here. We're just happy to be here.
Absolutely. I think when you face death like you did, I mean, literally, you're in an ambulance, you had to be thinking, oh my goodness, this will be the end. You knew something was wrong with your heart by that point, but were you going to survive this? It had to be scary. So you're a bonus time.
Agreed. I think every day is. We all know we don't know when.
We're kind of all on bonus time, aren't we?
right? It's when you get the recognition of, this is really extra bonus time. This is a wake-up call, and there's a reason for all this. Everybody has their faith, whatever it may be.
And you're a great human doing so much for others. And one of the ways that you're doing so much for others, not just in the nonprofit space, but also in the myocardial bridging space, is with your podcast. So
Right.
tell us about Imperfect Heart.
Imperfect Heart was born out of this condition, obviously, and I was in the hospital when I was about to be released. And I told my wife, I have a podcast studio. I produce podcasts with people. If there was ever a wake-up call, as he did, you have to communicate this, your fear, gives us bonus time, or give you this break to do something. You've got to do something with it, something to benefit all the other people who are
You knew that
situated.
too. While you were in the hospital,
Yes.
you knew this was in your mind. Okay.
I told the doctor, do me a favor, would you be one of my first guests? And he said, absolutely. Now, it took me a year to get to where I knew what I was going to do it and how I was going to do it. And once I started getting it all fabricated in my head, what it was going to look like, my anniversary date is January 4th. I will launch the podcast on January 4th.
Oh, that's so
So
perfect.
it was January 4th in 2022.
Okay, so you're in the hospital, you're thinking, okay, there's a reason this has happened. I need to be the person to help provide information to the world, because 1 in 4 people has this and may not even know that they have this until it's too late. We don't want that. We want to start identifying people like you who are asymptomatic for such a long
Right.
time. So what is the goal with the podcast?
Twofold. We want to help people who have the condition understand they're not alone, that they're not crazy, especially women who do this so often. And it's so strong. And we see it time and time again.
We see it
Have
in the
challenge.
congenital heart space as well. Well, this is congenital,
Yes.
but we see it for other congenital heart conditions as well. It's happening way too much.
Yeah.
It's too easy an excuse.
So it's to benefit people with the condition. We are people who have been surgically repaired. We are people in the process trying to get diagnosed, sharing doctors, where to go across the country, across the world now. We talk to doctors in India, doctors in Europe, so people know that there's somebody they can speak with. And then the other part of it, the twofold part, is to change base cardiology understanding that this condition is not benign, and I will tell you, people are dying from it every single day because they're not diagnosed properly. If you are experiencing ventricular chest pain, nobody can figure out what it is. It seems really odd. You don't have any blockage. Go down this path, and you can clearly identify that it's something else. But more often than not, it's caused by a bridge. That's what it is.
So if you have chest pain, especially if you're a woman, you have chest pain, they've said it's anxiety, you know it's not anxiety, you take the anxiety pills, it doesn't help, you
Right.
still don't feel well. Can you go to your cardiologist and say, what about a CT scan? Can you do that
Yes.
as a patient?
Yes. Yeah. And demand it. Because whatever they're doing isn't working.
Right.
Rather than spend years on tests that aren't going to work, let's go the other way. Let's start with a CT and let's identify it. Let's make sure it's not this. And if it is, don't accept benign as an answer.
Right, especially if it's getting worse. Is this something that you see newer cardiologists coming out of school are more aware of? We need to get this into schools.
Unfortunately, no.
We need to get this into medical schools so that the future cardiologists coming out are aware of this and ready to diagnose it properly and treat it properly.
Yes. The difference between the other cardiologists and the older, the younger, may not be aware of it coming out, but they're much more accepting of new information.
Right.
Whereas an older cardiologist, many of them, are like, yes, I know it's not it.
That just breaks my heart.
Right?
So what's the number one piece of information you want people to take away from this episode today?
If you have symptoms, if you have chest pain, don't deny it, which is easy to do because we all want to be fine. We think we're
Right.
fine.
Well, especially if you're fit and
Right.
healthy, and that was a problem with it's night as well.
Many of the people I speak with on the show, they got myocardials. They also have the same situation. Just don't deny
They'll push.
Yes. Somebody look at you right away because sooner is better than later. And then if you do get dismissed, find somebody else that's going to find a solution.
Okay. Is there a website? Is there an organization that can help people?
There's Anna. There's the Myocardial Bridge Facebook group. We all talk about who the doctors are. Sadly, I say that with loads of optimism too. There's just not that many. But what's great is over the course of the several years that I've been in there, we're now seeing more and more. Just people will find somebody in Florida that did it, or somebody in Philadelphia, or there's somebody in Atlanta, and they have now the capability of doing it about it.
You know that the more people do it, the more facility they get
That's
with
correct.
doing it, hopefully the better the results will be. Then we'll start getting some professional literature talking about this and debunking the idea that it is a benign condition.
That's correct. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so thank you so much for coming on a further
Well,
today. I
thank
feel
you.
like I've heard so much.
This is wonderful. And I hope we do turn some people on to the fact that they have this condition. And if they do, I hope they let you know.
I hope so too. Thanks again, Jeff. I appreciate it. Friends, that does conclude this episode of Heart to Heart. Thanks for listening. Here at Podcast Movement, this has been so much fun. Thanks again to Ear Rolling Studio for letting us record this episode here. It's been great. If you have a great idea for an episode, please reach out to me on the Heart to Heart with Facebook page. And remember, my friends, you are not alone.
Thank you again for joining us this week. We hope you have become inspired and empowered to become an advocate for the congenital heart community. Heart to Heart with Anna with your host, Anna Jaworski, can be heard at any time wherever you get your podcasts. A new episode is released every Tuesday from noon Eastern Time.